Hello and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin with the Modern Observer Group. And with me, as always, is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
I'm doing wonderful. How about you, Eric?
I'm doing great. It has been a crazy week. And unfortunately, there has been so much negativity going around. And that's one of the reasons I am so glad we have our special guest this week. You and I have spoken so much about mindset. Well, this week's guest not only speaks the same language as we do about mindset, but she's teaching children how to do it. And more than that, she's also one of my co-authors in Cracking the Rich Code, Volume 14, which has just come out. So I am very pleased to introduce Tammy Vallieres.
Awesome. Oh, this is such a pleasure, guys. I am so excited, and I'm beyond thrilled that we're in the book together as well, because we get to edify each other and shine the light back and forth. So super exciting about what this is going to bring to us. Yeah, just happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So Tammy, tell our audience a little bit about what you do. And I know you just finished a camp, so tell us what that was all about.
Yeah, so I call myself the hero intelligence teacher because I teach to the whole child, the hero head. Because again, that's all around a mindset, right? We see things as an opportunity for possibilities, infinite possibilities. We don't see them as problems, but as puzzles to be solved. So that's the hero mindset. Then the hero heart is all about helping others. But before you can help others, you need to love yourself, right? So we go into the hero head, heart. The hero hands is all around doing what you love, being in alignment with your purpose, your passion, your strengths, your interests, your North Star. So imagine if each one of us were doing what we love and what we were born to be, the whole world would be in a new and different place. So the hero hands, and then we go into hero health. So hero health is about mental health, emotional health, physical health, and spiritual health. And that awareness that we are all of those things. And if we have that in alignment, we're able to live our best life. And that's what leads us to the hero happiness, right? Because when we're, have the head, heart, hands, health in alignment, that's how we can show up as our best self. So that's basically where the hero comes from. And then the hero's journey is that it's one conversation that Joseph Campbell had us in connecting to all ages, denominations, and races can identify with those hero stories and that heroic call to action in our own lives. So it's about bringing people together in unity versus separation and division.
Yes, as Joseph Campbell's best known for, it's the power of myth. And I love the concept of what you do, but I really love the fact that you're teaching this to children.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where I started to realize, like, what are the two biggest factors how we learn best? And as a school teacher, I discovered that we learn best through storytelling, right? And that's from the beginning of time. We remember stories because they not only reach and connect with our head, but also our heart on an emotional level. So I became a master at storytelling and creating these little characters that all have lessons and wisdom imparted on them. And then what I've also done is created a scaffolding. So it's a building up of, so it's not just a one-off, right? And where you learn, so you get to go deep, deep, deep dive into these stories and understand the characters and really start to embody, what they're thinking and saying and feeling and teaching, this wisdom. So, and then the second area I realized is when you teach and tell it to someone else. So I set my kindergarten classroom up for storytelling, and then they have to learn the story and then teach it and tell it to a friend. So that's how they really embody it and learn through these characters. And children love animals. So it's all through animal stories.
That's terrific. And, we've talked about the power of storytelling on this podcast numerous times. It really is important because you learn more when you relate to it, and that you have to engage emotion to be able to do it. And more than that, any memory expert will tell you, if you have it keyed to an emotion, it becomes part of you. It's easier to remember and
Yes.
you embody it. So getting that into kindergartners is fantastic because, so many basics are taught in kindergarten that we carry with us for the rest of our lives. This is an important lesson that most schools don't teach them.
100%. And that's what I started to realize. Imagine if I had gone back and I could go back with a magic wand and reteach and reparent myself back to that age. So a lot of it is exactly what you're saying, right? There's a book called Everything You Need to Know About Life You Learned in Kindergarten, right? Because it's the foundation. It truly is the foundation in which we operate and build our life from. And I always like to connect it back to the Olympics. You think about, when do you start teaching children and putting children in skis and skates and in athleticism and any type of sports? You start when they're 4 and 5, because if you start young and they don't have this limitation, they're not afraid, they persevere. Think about walking. They'll fall 100 times and they'll get back up. But try to teach somebody to walk again at 25, 35. 65, way harder, because we have all these fears and limitation beliefs around it. So the earlier intervention we can learn this stuff, the better chance you have at supporting children in the fundamentals of living and navigating their best life.
Yeah, it really is so important that you're getting to them, when they're still a blank slate. They haven't been facing all of life's hurdles yet, and they haven't been told 1,000 times, oh, you can't do that, try something else. At that age, they honestly believe they can do anything. And by getting them to hold on to that message, that changes their whole lives.
Yeah, and like I said, I love taking the Olympics, because if you took a kid in sports, like at 4, and in ski jumping, for example, where is that child going to be at 16 versus putting them in ski jumping at 16? So, and starting that pathway. So there, you have so many years, skills, learning. So now when you start to think about it, when you asked me what we're doing with our Camp Supernova just a little earlier before we came on, we're in partnership now with Adam and Matthew Torin, who are all around kidpreneurs and teaching kids in business and starting as young as age 6 years old with these learning skills, because these guys started their business with their grandfather as young as 7, 8, 9, right? Like that was when they started their business. And now they're the international, well-renowned, entrepreneurs, because they started these skills super young.
Yeah, I love the emphasis on child. I mean, I'm a grandfather, have 4-year-old and 2-year-old, and I teach positivity and I talk about creation. And my talk used to be called The Power of Positivity, Turning Obstacles into Opportunities. And I just changed the title this year to The Kindness Platform, because we're all talking about platforms for politics and everything else. But creation, and that's all of us, all of creation, not just human beings. We're all born from loving kindness. Yes. That is the original platform. And all my message is if you can put that above other platforms that we created with our own, basically we were created just like you talked about, the child. All we're doing is observing and loving everything. And then we start growing up a little bit, and through no fault of their own, because mankind has always done this, we start developing our free will, which was the other thing that we got, which has done amazing things, but it's also the source of all of our conflicts and everything else. So what you're doing by what you are doing is just grabbing the kids, getting them back to that source before they get corrupted, and setting their perspective, which is basically the way that you look at things, with that on top, realizing they're going to run through bumps in their lives and so on and so forth. But you can have fun doing those things too. So, I mean, when I found out that you were coming on today, I was so excited. And basically what Eric was talking about before, with all the things that are going on right now, you were meant to be on the podcast today. So it's great.
I love what you're saying, Chip, because it really does. Here's what I started to realize. We all have different things that we bring into the table, right? We can learn. We're all master students and we're all master teachers. At the youngest of age, there's no limit to being a master teacher. And also at the oldest of age, we're still learning and being master students, right? We never stop that process. But what I love about what you just shared is children are born loving. right? They are born forgiving. They are born with a creative imagination. They are born seeing, the forgiveness. They are just born. That's who they are. And then we program and we project a lot of our judgments and conditionings and belief systems onto them. And we create prejudice, right? We teach them that. We teach them color. We teach them separation and division. We teach them that, but they're born that way. So imagine if we could take these conscious educators, grandparents, parents, teachers, and we could just start with where they already are that, and we could learn from them, because I think we have experience, but what they have over us are the natural abilities to love, right? With no conditions, and to see the world with wonder and curiosity and persevere. Those are the qualities that we really do need to learn from children, as much as they need to learn and grow from us, from our experiences. But imagine that world.
Yep. I mean, that's what they were. They were just born from love. And the first thing they could do is just observe, love mommy and daddy, everybody around them, and so on and so forth. And then the world starts happening. And if they can just basically get back to the platform where we all came from, even though we're taught about succeeding and doing this and that, whatever, which brings up feelings of insecurity and whatever, we are all unconditionally loved, whether we feel like we deserve it or not. And if we can get back to that and basically
and build that, where would we be if we could? And this is why we created Kindergarten Masterclass, because if we started to educate at the kindergarten level internationally, just there, in 10 years, 20 years, what kind of new leaders would we able to be and have on the planet? And not only that, business leaders. Imagine children that are ethical. And that's what we teach in Camp Supernova, is we teach them not just about creating wealth, but prosperity. And prosperity means they're supporting all aspects in their life, their health, their happiness, their career, and ethical. It's not just about creating businesses to make money, but businesses that are going to help the planet, the environment, to help people, right? Nutritious products and things like that. So imagine teaching them that, and that being at the core of who they are, and them being the next generation who's conscientious of this new earth and new world.
Yeah, it really is amazing. I mean, and if you think about how this can move forward, I mean, think about how kids play, how they draw, paint. There's no limitations to them. And we tend to go, well, okay, that's a great painting, but you're never going to be a professional artist, so let's focus you on something else. But if we don't do that to them, if we show them that, yes, you can try new things, you can do things, what kind of innovations would this generation come up with?
Yeah, it's magic. Well, I don't know if you guys have ever heard the study done by NASA. It was a study done, George Land did a TED Talk on it. And so what he did is they created an aptitude test to test the creative intelligence, because they were looking in NASA for more creativity, right? And they realized that these 4 and 5-year-olds could do this test. So they tested 1,600 4 and 5-year-olds with this aptitude test. And how many of them do you think showed up as geniuses, creative geniuses?
I would say most of them.
What do you think, Chip?
I would agree.
Yeah, so they realized that 98% of children are born creative geniuses. And by age 10, they drop down to 30%, and age 15 down to 12. And by age 30, that same study group was down to 2%. So what do we do in the industry? And George Land said that was his most important work he had ever done in NASA. Can you imagine if people took that study super serious and we started to, create that in our school systems, what that could mean? So why didn't we take that result, right? Why didn't we take that more seriously and start to look at what are we doing to children, and how instead could we keep them at that genius level and help them to magnify that instead of reduce it at that rate?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, our educational system, and this is true internationally, seems to be based on the fixed mindset. And we've talked about this a lot on this podcast, how you really need a growth mindset to be able to, succeed.
Mhm.
So we're programming our kids not to be their best.
Well, we've got the 2% geniuses teaching the 98% genius our way.
Yeah,
So,
it's
I was on an interview last week, and he said, just imagine if children ran the world. And there is a book called If Kids Ruled the World, right? But here's the thing, we need conscious educators and parents who are already awake to this to start the structure. And that's where, how do we find these people? Which is why I love the book Cracking the Rich Code, because number one, you got to get your voice out there. People have to realize that there is people doing this, and then get on that vision and mission, and then let's start working in unity to start getting the training and the qualifications out there and the language out there, which I've been working on for honestly the last 25 years. First reprogramming and educating myself, and then implementing it and doing it in the classroom so I could actually have true studies and results.
Tell us a little bit about your journey. You just said you had to educate yourself on this. How did you do that? And how did you come up with these concepts?
So my journey was interesting. I struggled myself, very difficult through the school system. I was labeled learning disabled, but I was almost a year younger than everybody when I started school. So developmentally, now I can go back and look at that and realize that that wasn't a fair assessment of myself. And then that label really did a lot of damage on my self-esteem and my belief system about myself. And I just thought I was stupid, right? So I went through the school system. And it wasn't until I went to college and I found my superpower, my strength, which was psychology. And I had a professor say, would you mind tutoring? And I was like, don't you realize I'm not smart? Like, don't you realize who I am? But I had 98% in psych, and it was literally, I found my superpower. And then I started to go into school. I became an early childhood educator. I became a teacher, went to university, took my psych degree. And then I started, going into the school system at an older age with also more experiences and more awareness that, the system didn't work for me. So I was always challenging it. And I was always, looking at new and innovative ways. But it wasn't honestly until I was teaching in a grade 5-6 class, and it was Remembrance Day, the moment of silence, when all my students and I were standing there, and it was literally silent. You could drop a pin, and a dove hit our window at that moment of silence, and it was like a gunshot went off. And for me, it became my call to action, my hero's journey. And I started Googling 11, at the moment of silence and the symbolism of dove. And this whole spiritual awakening took place inside of me. And I wrote a book called Jeffrey Finds His Way. And it was all about a little angel in heaven who looks down from heaven's gates and sees all these children suffering in Earth School. And he looks up to God and says, why aren't all children shining brightly in Earth like they do in heaven, where every child shines bright? So it created this question of why. And then if you look at, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it's going to believe its whole life it's stupid. And so I started to create around this animal school, right? Like, you wouldn't put all the animals in the ocean and expect them to, the birds to thrive. So it's like, well, we're very similar in that nature, that we all have different strengths and abilities. And imagine if we were tailored to what it is. Imagine if we went into school looking what children's strengths are and being curious about what their purpose and passion is, because let's face it, everything has a purpose. A pencil, right? Its creator created it for a purpose. So how are we as people, is it even possible that we don't each come with our own purpose? So this bigger meaning of life, this bigger quest for life, is what started my journey to, doing my own investigation, my own spiritual awakening, my own quest of understanding myself and how I fell through the cracks through the system. And then it became my purpose and my passion, which now is my calling.
Yeah, I love the term spiritual awakening, because again, basically a lot of what we're talking about today has always been in us. When I'm talking to people, I've said, I'm not teaching you anything, but what I am doing is I'm making you aware.
Right.
And your life is always going to be like this. But if you got that awareness going for you, you're one step closer to being there. And if we can just totally understand, we've been talking a whole lot about children. is that that's where they came from. And we're the ones that throughout mankind, as soon as we walked out of the Garden of Eden with a mind, we started coming up with all these different things. And if we came up with them, we can still go back to the source that we all came from of creation, which is loving kindness, and get there. And basically what needs to be done is exactly what you teach and was talking about, is getting back to that. Because why are we growing up and all we're talking about is goals and achievement and so on and so forth? It's because we've been talking about that since mankind started walking the earth. And if we could put that in perspective and have everybody understand that what they do there is just going to facilitate doing what they're meant to be doing for the good of the world, then it puts things in a different perspective and it makes things a whole lot better. I mean, it's one thing to just go punch a clock every day, living in what I call the land of Sameville, Sameville, which is just allowing the outside world that you have no control over to run your life. But at any point in time, your mindset is your choice and you can choose positivity. And it's easier said than done. But now all of you folks out there in podcast land are aware of that again, because you've heard me say this a zillion times.
Yeah. Yeah, I teach the ABCs: attitudes, behaviors, choices, right? So when your attitude determines your altitude, behaviors is your best self when you show up as your best. Choices, we always have a choice, right? And a pathway. And then I continue it on to DEF. So discover your diamonds within. What are your diamonds deep within yourself? That awareness of what it is inside of you to be discovered. E is energy and emotions, right? So all about understanding and managing your emotions and understanding that we are energy. We are vibrationally a match to what we're thinking and feeling. And then F is our future self. And our future is I am, we are. And imagine if we all on a conscious level started to elevate in stepping into that. You know, it starts with ourself, but imagine 8 billion people on the planet. We all started to live our best life. We all started to live on purpose. And we all started to even take action steps. One piece of garbage, there's 8 billion pieces of garbage in an instant, you know, just cleaned up. So we have to start seeing ourselves in unity and this collectiveness. And I love when you brought up, you know, Adam and Eve, because, you know, in the beginning, that's where children are. They're running around, streaking around naked. They don't care. Like, you know, Amos said, you know, they've got their big gut and they're like, look at my belly. Like, they're just so proud. They're not worried about anybody else. And imagine that is true freedom. You know, in this, we always are going after this tree of knowledge and want to learn more, right? But it takes us away because half that knowledge, 3/4 of the knowledge is a lot of deceit, and it's false and it's not even true. And then we buy into that. We forget the truth of who we are.
Yeah, that's so true. And I love that you use the term discover your diamonds, because I have been using diamonds as a metaphor for a while now, because we are all carbon-based life forms, and diamonds are carbon. They're also the hardest substance on Earth. However, if those molecules are arranged in a different order, instead of diamonds, you get graphite, which is one of the softest elements on Earth. So it's all about the decision of how you're ordering yourself.
So good, right? I love this conversation. You know, this is where I wish, to be honest, I wish there were more educators in the school system, because that's where honestly I feel very alone on this journey. And I feel like, you know, that conscious place, like I'm trying to find myself. So I've got one foot in education and the other foot in entrepreneurial world, where I'm learning about personal growth and development. And that's why it's so beautiful, because there's this crossover. Very few people cross over in both worlds. They're usually in one or the other. So, you know, that's where I'm really blessed to be working with, you know, Adam Matthew Torn in the entrepreneurial world, and my business partner, Sylvia Tam, who's a mompreneur raising 3 kidpreneurs. So she's done it. So we together in our trio, we are covering home, school, and career, which is where we need to create this natural progression, because that's where we go. We first start in the home, and then we move into school, and then we move into career, but we don't have a common language that connects them. So everything is in separation and division, continuing all these no communication that travels over to each other very fluently.
Fantastic. Now, we've mentioned the book Cracking the Rich Code a few times. Tell us a little bit about your chapter.
So our chapter actually includes myself, Sylvia, and Adam and Matthew. So Jim was fortunate enough to and kind enough to let us all go in here and tell our story of how we came together. Because if we think about it, we wanted 3 masterminds, right? The power of a mastermind is how do you come together in a trio, and the power of 3 is literally the strongest number in the world, right? Is the foundation. So how do we take this 3 of us who have lived that in authenticity and experience and come together and work together as one to create a new language and a new pathway for children starting as young as, kindergarten and up.
Excellent. And just so our audience knows, Tammy mentioned Jim. The Jim she's talking about is Jim Britt, who is the main author of Cracking the Rich Code, all of the volumes, and he's the one that actually found us all and put us together for these volumes.
Yeah, so grateful to have found him. And this is what I love about even having Tony Robbins on the front with us, because Tony's a new parent again. And if you look at him with his new upgraded wisdom and everything he's learned, what is he doing? He is taking exactly all of that stuff and teaching his young 2-3-year-old child from everything that he's gained over collectively parenting and educating and teaching. So I'm really excited to see who he's going to help to shape in his youngest child, right? And that's what we get as a teacher. I get to do that over and over and over again. So I get to be a master at working with a new class every September. Whereas parents, you get, your 1 shot, or if you have 3 kids, you get 3 shots at it. So as a teacher, I teach over 65 kids a day because I have 3 kindergarten master classes a day.
That's amazing. Yes, the Cracking the Rich Code project is endorsed by Tony Robbins. The preface is by Brian Tracy, best known for Eat That Frog. We've talked a lot about that on this podcast. So it really has been an amazing project bringing these people together. I mean, it's called Cracking the Rich Code, but it's so much more than just about money. It's about making you rich in your life.
Yes.
And that's essentially what you are teaching kids to do. And although I think I'm a little hesitant to call it teaching, because I know kids tend to know this stuff intuitively.
Yes. Guide.
What
I would say we're more of a guide, right? And that's why I always say I'm a master student and a master teacher as well as they are. So we're all teaching and guiding one another. And my biggest journey from them as they're my master teachers is returning back to my inner child, to returning back to my authentic self. And they give me permission because it's such a safe place. They love unconditionally. They don't judge. So my most beautiful thing that I've gained out of teaching these children every single day is the truth and the journey back to my inner child.
And it's more than just guiding. What you're doing, though, is because you're validating these beliefs. You're telling them that, yes, what you know to be true really is true. Don't let other people tell you. Don't let it get beaten down.
Absolutely, right? When they believe it and they hear it and they build off of that, I hope that those seeds are planted, and then they can dismiss things that don't align with that core belief that they started with. And think about even just how children will believe Santa Claus and Easter Bunny. They're so filled with faith. I wish I could have so much faith. I know I would be able to manifest at a very fast rate if I didn't have as many trolls and as many paradigm beliefs to get through. If I was as filled with faith as children was, and knowing this information, I'd be able to do it at such fast speed.
Yeah, we really do need to harness the mindset of kids. So we are just about at the end of our time. So Tammy, it's been great having you here. And if our audience would like to learn more about your programs, how can they do so?
Yeah, if you go to raisingempoweredkids.com, and then if you want to get in the book, chapter 14 with you and I, that would be awesome. You can hear about our story there as well.
And of course, Cracking the Rich Code Volume 14 will be available in bookstores shortly. You can already order your copies at xvadio.com. So, Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway for our audience this week?
I don't know if Tammy mentioned her own website. Have you?
So the website that we have is raisingempoweredkids.com. I kind of left my own website and we started to go as this trio and focus there. But you can find me on Tammy Vallieres on LinkedIn or Tammy V in Facebook, and just those places as well.
Yeah, because there's wonderful things in your website too. But to me, the takeaway, I mean, normally I talk about point A, point B, and so on and so forth. And we've all talked about where we came from, our childhood, which is just unconditional loving kindness. And people grow up, and you went through this yourself, how come I'm here, and so on and so forth. And you went back, and all of a sudden you're back to your childhood moment. The message here is a lot of people would like to go back to school and do things and so on and so forth. And the awareness message is you can do that at any point in time. Go back to your childhood mindset and use that to guide you in starting over. Because life is nothing more than a series of present moment events, and realizing you're always going to have some bad ones. You can really have some wonderful ones and make a difference, not only for you, but by your example, you're going to make it for a whole lot of people, just like you're doing, Tammy. So God bless. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And how I always end it is the hero in me sees the hero in each and every one of you. So
fantastic. I think for me, the big takeaway is that children have this infinite mindset. They already think in terms of abundance. And if we can cement that in them so that they don't lose that, and at the same time bring it out in more adults, we can really make such a tremendous impact, not just on individual lives, but on the planet as a whole. It's an amazing opportunity. And that's really what we have to do. So thank you, Tammy, for being here. It's been great talking with you. And you've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch every episode of the Success Showcase at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.